Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Chakudash. Double honor to the apostles of GMS that give us his truth and all his purity. And salutations to all the Akim pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth with sincerity and the truth. This is an article from thehill.com, and the title reads, Iran's president says country is in full-scale war with U.S., Israel, and Europe. It says Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian on Saturday said his nation is at war with the United States and Israel, as well as Europe more broadly. We are in a full-scale war with the U.S., Israel, and Europe. They don't want our country to remain stable, Pezeshkian said in an interview published on the website of Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, according to the Associated Press. It says Khamenei and Pezeshkian have reiterated an ironclad stance against the West after a U.S. and Israel-led attack on Iran's nuclear facilities in June. So Iran, they're ready, and the reason why they're becoming more bold is because they know they have the backing of Russia. After the, I think it was a 17-day war between themselves and Israel. Russia pretty much has been supplying them with ammunition, with missile defense systems and different things to protect themselves against Israel and America. And Iran's missile production capability far outpaces America's as well as Europe. They have I believe, an arsenal of over 50,000 missiles, which is more than what Israel has, and I believe more than what America has as well. Because America, although they do have the best military, the best so-called defense system, they don't have the right production logistics like Iran and Russia. Russia alone produces 4 times more military ammunition and equipment than America and NATO combined every year. So, these other nations, they're basically outdoing Babylon as far as production and performance as well, because America now is still working on the hypersonic missiles, whereas Iran already has it, China has it, and Russia has it, but America's still working on it. And I believe they said that they're about 5 to 10 years behind China and Russia. So they still testing these things, which shows you that America is no longer really the world superpower. And then we have, Netanyahu, Trump, Iran. Okay. This is Netanyahu pushes for more strikes on Iran, clashing with Trump's priorities. So pretty much Trump and Netanyahu, they supposed to meet up tomorrow, Monday. Monday the 30th. And Netanyahu supposedly is going to ask Trump for permission to strike Iran. And the timing is perfect because Iran said they're ready for a full-blown war. So 2026 is going to pop off with a bang. This whole coming year is going to be filled with nothing but plagues and prophecies, man. And the main prophecy being the RFID chip in World War III, which go hand in hand. Because the scriptures say that once the chip becomes available on a global scale, that's when, the fear of the Lord is going to come up in the form of the missiles. So a great portion of the world has to fall for this MOTB, for the Lord to bring about the judgment. which is World War III, you know. This is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse... No, I think it's up. Okay, this is Jeremiah chapter 49. Matter of fact, yeah, I'm going to jump up a little. This is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 14. It says, I have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent unto the heathen, saying, gather ye together and come against her and rise up to the battle. So this is what's taking place now. All these different nations, they're getting ready for war with America, Babylon the Great. It says, For lo, I will make thee small among the heathen and despised among men. And that's what we see happening. The so-called white man is despised all over the world. But mainly the so-called white man calling himself a Jew, you know, because they're one and the same. They're one nation, just different tribes. The J-ish man is the tribe of Amalek, you know, but they're still of the nation of Edom, you know. So the whole world now is rising up against them. Everybody's criticizing, you know, the small hats for how they're just dropping bombs all over the Middle East on the Palestinians, on the Jordanians, the Lebanese, the Syrians, you know, you name it. They're just going crazy all over the Middle East. And in doing so, they have become despicable. The whole world despises them, which is why everybody is coming together to go against them. It says, thy terribleness have deceived thee, and the pride of thine heart. Your terribleness have deceived you. Let's see what terribleness is in the Hebrew. The word there in the Hebrew is thapa la tazat. Thapala tazaf. And it says shuddering horror. It says terror, fear. So the so-called white man, he's known for spreading terror all over the earth, you know, by the way of his military, dropping bombs on people, you know, invading their lands and sending their militaries on them, you know. You see how they're dropping bombs on Nigeria, on Venezuela, on these smaller countries that really, you know, they don't even have to really worry about, you know. But that's the devil for you, man, the so-called white man. He loves war. The scriptures say the words of his mouth are smoother than butter, but war is in his heart. So you see Trump talking about how they got to save the Christians from ISIS in Nigeria. That's his justification as to why he's dropping bombs on them, you know. But that's not really the case. The case is they want the resources, they want to cripple Jake, and they want to get to Burkina Faso, you know, because they don't want Jake to rise up. You see? So Jeremiah 49:16, thy terribleness have deceived thee, and the pride of thine heart, O thou that dwellest in the cliffs of the rock, that holdest the height of the hill, which is America, holdest the cliffs, that dwellest in the cliffs of the rock, which is Esau Edom, the so-called white man. The term for the so-called white man is what? Caucasian, which means cave dweller. You come here to America, to these major cities, all you see is what? Cliffs of rocks in the form of what? The buildings, because that's what they are, you know? It says that holdest the height of the hill. When you read the scriptures, governments are referred to as mountains and hills, which is why whenever you have these nations having those meetings among, those world leaders. They call it a summit, which is the peak, the peak of these nations getting together. America, Japan, pretty much the the G7, former G7, because now I think Trump is trying to establish a different version of it. But, mountains and hills represents government. So when it says, thou that holdest the height of the hill, meaning what? America's on top of all these other nations. America's the top leading country, nation in the world. It says, though thou shouldest make thy nest as high as the eagle, I will bring thee down from thence, saith the Lord. Also Edom shall be a desolation. Everyone that goeth by it shall be astonished, and shall hiss at all the plagues thereof. That's right. So, Edom is synonymous with Babylon. When you read this chapter, it shows you that Edom is Babylon, because the same judgment prophesied to Babylon is the same judgment prophesied to Edom. Verse 18, it says, as in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof, saith the Lord, no man shall abide there, neither shall the son of man dwell in it. Which shows you that the so-called white man, America, is the new Sodom and Gomorrah, ruled by Edom, Esau Edom. The scriptures talk about how America is spiritual Sodom and Egypt, it's spiritual Babylon the Great, right? Mystery Babylon, spiritual Assyria, spiritual Nineveh, all these ancient pagan kingdoms. America's a mixture of all them together, which is why the scriptures call it Babylon, which means confusion. It says, behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan against the habitation of the strong, but I will make him run away from her. And who is a chosen man that I may appoint over her? For who is like me, and who will appoint me to time, and who is that shepherd that will stand before me? That's right. So the Lord, he's the one that's in control. He's the one taking this man down. Yahweh Shemel Shah is the one dictating this whole movie. Verse 20, therefore hear the counsel of the Lord that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. So this is the plans of the Lord against Edom. This is how the Lord is going to take Edom down. He's going to use the least of the flock, which is Amalek, the J-ish people. The Lord said he's going to use them to draw them out. Draw who out? Draw out the armies. Draw out Babylon the Great. Draw out Russia, which is Gog and Magog. Iran and all these world armies into the Middle East region. Amalek is going to do that, right? It says, surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. The earth is moved at the noise of the fall, at the cry the noise thereof was heard in the Red Sea. That's right. So the earth is going to be moved at the noise of their fall. At the noise of whose fall? The Edomites' fall. Because the missiles are mainly going to land on Edomite countries, starting with America, which the scriptures say 200,000 warheads are going to pelt this place off the face of the earth. And Israel is going to get hit with nukes as well. But the only difference is Israel won't be totally wiped off the map. It will be rebuilt, and the kingdom, after the smoke clears and the elect goes around the earth enslaving the remaining heathens, the land is going to be rebuilt, but the earth is moved at the noise of their fall. The earth is going to reel to and fro like a drunkard, because these missiles is meant for the fall of Edom. It says, at the cry the noise thereof was heard in the Red Sea. Now let's go to Revelation 16. Matter of fact, I'm going to read this one, but it's not the one I'm looking for. This is Revelation 16:16. It says, and he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon, which means mountain of troops, which is over there in the Middle East, the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, the Most High's judgment, the Middle East region. That is where the epicenter of World War III is going to take place. Let's see. I think it's Revelation 12. Is it 12? Or Revelation 20. Okay, this is Revelation chapter 20, verse 8. It says, matter of fact, verse 7, it says, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. The 1,000 years represents the period of the Dark Ages, where you had our people, the so-called Negroes, ruling Europe, and you had the so-called white man in a base position. They were in the caves, and they were in a position of servitude. So the Lord said, after 1,000 years are expired, Satan, which is Esau Edom, the so-called white man, starting with Amalek, the J-ish man, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison. So that's what happened, during the late 1300s. You had these so-called white people, starting to, come out of their low positions and come up into power, mainly starting with Amalek. You had these crime families amongst these Amalekites, these different, heads that knew that they were Edomites. And Amalek always knew they were, Amalek and Esau Edom, because they kept the records. But if you look it up, you'll see that the spread of the bubonic plague or the black plague, and hey, the reason they called it the black plague is because it was killing black people, But what started it was Amalek. When you look into it, before the plague broke out, you had J-ish people going all over Europe and the wells and putting stuff in the wells. And, history will show you the pictures and they'll say, oh, Jewish people adding vitamins to the water. But that is not the case. They were putting the plague in the water, which is what's made it spread so quickly among Jake, and once that weakened our people because the bubonic plague killed 2/3 of our people. Now you had these so-called white people now coming up and these are filling up these different positions of, power that was, void now that Jake was killed. And the ultimate position of power, seat of power that they took was the papacy. Once they got in the Vatican with Pope Alexander Borgia, that's when they basically stamped their newer order, and they gave the decree to go out and, whitewash our images, and bring forth manifest destiny, which is prophecy fulfilled. So the whole time these Edomites knew who they were and they knew what they were doing, but that 1,000 years is the period of the Dark Ages. So it says that when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. That's right. So Satan, the least of the flock, Amalek, is gonna draw them out. The least of the flock shall draw them out. Gathering the different nations, Gog and Magog, Iran and all these different nations. Now let's go to the book of, let's see, Joel. It says Joel chapter 3, verse 9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. So this is what's happening. All these different nations, they're all tapping into the, missile nuclear technology. And the main way they're doing that is by aligning themselves with Russia and China to get that technology. So now America can't really bully them anymore. If you notice, Trump is not bullying countries with nuclear weapons. They're not bullying North Korea. He's not attacking them because he knows they got nukes. The countries he knows is protected, he won't attack them. It shows you how weak America is. So it says, assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. So that's what the Lord is going to bring about judgment day, in all these different nations. It says, let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in a sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full, the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahshua is near in the valley of decision. So we're talking millions and millions and tens and hundreds of millions of armies over there being gathered for slaughter, And the scriptures talk about how post World War III, the Lord is going to have a great feast for these different fowls, for the crows, the vultures, these different fowls that feast on dead things, Okay, this is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 2. It says, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tabor, and prophesy against them, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Yahshua power, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tabor, which is Vladimir Putin. He's the chief prince of Meshach and Tabor, And Apostle Tahar, he brought this out many a times. The word Russia goes back to the Hebrew word Ra'ash, which means chief, So, yeah, man, the scriptures are alive, man. Everything that's written in the book is coming to life in these latter days, man. And the Lord is being found to be true. And every man is being found to be a liar. It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. So the Lord is the one controlling Russia, Vladimir Putin, all the moves he's making, these alliances he's making with these different nations. The Lord is the one, doing that, And the Lord is the one equipping them with all this technology, to where they're becoming more and more advanced than NATO, because they know their survival depends on it. Whereas with America and NATO, the defense industries are all about profit. Whereas Russia, they know it's about survival. Their defense industry is backed by their government, whereas America is privatized. So that's why Russia can make more for less, It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. So we're talking old and new technology, super soldiers, robots, drones, you name it. All of this will be involved in World War III. It's going to look sci-fi out here. It says Persia. Persia is Iran, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. All of them handling, all of them with shield and helmet. And those specific countries are allies with Russia. Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya. They are close allies of Russia, which shows you the scriptures don't lie. It says, Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Gomer is Turkey. And Turkey is about to go to war with Israel over Syria. They're about to clash over there, And Trump already says he's going to back Israel. So you already know. If Turkey goes to war with Israel and Trump backs up Israel, guess what? Turkey is going to be allies with Russia. And they're already allies with Russia. They have a good relationship. But they're going to become closer and closer. It says, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So Russia is their protector and supplier for ammunition. If you want missiles, if you want drones, you want tanks, or whatever equipment, you go to Russia. Russia's supplying Iran, they're supplying Venezuela, right? They're supplying their allies, the small allies, with equipment. They're being a guard to those allies. It says, after many days thou shalt be visited, in the latter years thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel. So Russia is going to war with Israel. And they're going to be the main ones to cause the destruction of Israel, pursuing the prophecy. It says, which have been always waste, but it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm. Thou shalt be like a cloud to cover the land, thou and all thy bands and many people with thee. So we're talking paratroopers. We're talking, you just have to picture it in your mind how that region is going to look, over a certain horizon. All you see is just, you see jets and helicopters and, tanks, You just have to, picture that in your mind. Paratroopers, foot soldiers, right? It's going to look crazy. It says, thus saith the Lord, it shall also come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, that thou shalt think an evil thought. And the evil thought is going to be the thought of not giving a fuck and giving the green light to go ahead and shoot the missiles. And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, which is Babylon, America, the land of unwalled villages. You come here to America, a lot of houses, most houses don't even have a fence, You don't even have a fence or nothing really to separate between you and your neighbor, And that's also against the scriptures. The scriptures speak about woe to them that join house to house. Everybody's supposed to have their own quarters, man. Your own personal space. But this devil puts everybody on top of each other, man. But it says, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are rested, dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls, and having neither bars nor gates, which is America, man. The scriptures call Babylon the land that dwelleth carelessly, It says what? America in its heart. Babylon says, I am and none else beside me. I shall not see no evil, neither shall I know the loss of children. Speaking about Babylon, they don't think they could be touched. They don't think they could get taken down just because they allegedly have the greatest military in the world. But all throughout history, we see that the greatest military in the world doesn't mean, you can't get taken down. Look at the Egyptians. Look at the Babylonians. Look at the Persians. All these different nations at one point were thought to be were looked at and were the greatest at their time until the Lord raised up another nation to take them down. So it's no different in this day and age with Babylon the Great. The Lord is going to use Gog and Magog, Russia, as well as its allies, as well as America's allies and NATO. to shoot missiles at America. That's prophecy, you know. It says, yeah, that's pretty much it on this lesson, you know. A World War III is around the corner, you know, and the Lord is putting it in the spirit of these kings to bring forth about, this whole digital system. We see all the steps being laid, leading towards digital IDs and all of this, so that ultimately in 2026 they could fully, Lord's will, push the mark of the beast. But by them doing that, that's gonna bring about the end of their kingdom, because the mark and World War III is pretty much, they go hand in hand. Once the mark is fully made mandatory all over the world, then guess what? The destruction is coming right after. Matter of fact, let's get that. This is Revelation chapter 14, verse, it's 9, I think. Yep, it says, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, which is going into what? Those implants, whether it be a quantum dot implant, whether it be Neuralink or whatever, man. Whether it be a chip in your tongue, it don't even matter what size it is, what it looks like, what brand it is. If you take a digital chip device, in your body, an implant, you're doomed, You're doomed for the missiles. And it's going to go into it, verse 10. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of Yahweh Shemashah, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. That's right. So if you take the Neuralink, if you take quantum dot, whatever, man, if you take any of these digital, biological devices, you will be destroyed. And with that, I'm going to say shalom.